regulatory clarity coming out of the U.S. with that first the Genius Act. Now we have the Clarity Act, working its way through legislation. I think that was a pretty big pivot point, we could for sure we saw it within the U.S. market in terms of banks engaging with us on their digital asset strategies. But kind of to my pleasant surprise, I've noticed a pretty big momentum shift outside of the U.S. as well. Being here this week in Singapore for the FinTech Festival, I mean, we've had a number of meetings with banks all throughout the Southeast Asia region, and everyone's really leaning in.
Did you hear what Ripple's president just said? Banks are rushing to Ripple right now. Not next year, not when regulations pass, right now. Monica Long just dropped a bombshell that most people completely missed. She called this moment a pivot point. And when the president of Ripple uses those words, you need to pay attention. And speaking of institutions making moves, Morgan Stanley just announced something that should have every XRP holder's attention. They're not stopping at Bitcoin anymore. The Wall Street giant is now actively exploring tokenized money market funds and crypto tax tools for their client base. And we're not talking about some small hedge fund here. We're talking about $9.3 trillion in assets under management. Let that sink in for a moment. One of the most powerful financial institutions on the planet, the same bank that serves the wealthiest families in America, is now building infrastructure for digital assets. They're not dipping their toes in the water anymore. They're diving in head first. And here's what most people don't understand about tokenized money, market funds. This is exactly the kind of institutional use case that Ripple has been positioning for. When you have Morgan Stanley exploring tokenization, when you have banks in Singapore leaning into Ripple, when you have the Genius Act creating regulatory clarity, these aren't coincidences. This is a coordinated shift happening across the entire financial system. Now, let me show you just how massive this opportunity really is. ETF volume has now crossed $22 trillion, and it's still expanding. $22 trillion. And the experts are saying all of this, every single dollar, is eventually coming on chain. Think about what that means for a moment. We're talking about the largest transfer of wealth onto blockchain technology in human history. This isn't speculation. This isn't hopium. This is the financial system literally rebuilding itself on digital rails. And when you look at what Monica Long said about banks engaging with Ripple on digital asset strategies, when you see Morgan Stanley building tokenization tools, you start to understand that XRP isn't just positioned for this transition. XRP was built for this transition. The infrastructure is ready. The regulations are coming. And $22 trillion in ETF volume is looking for a new home. But here's where things get really interesting. While most retail investors are panicking and selling, the smart money is quietly loading up. Binance stablecoin reserves just hit $46.3 billion. That's the highest level since early February. $5 billion in fresh dry powder has entered the exchange since the market bottom. Let me say that again. $5 billion. These aren't retail traders buying $50 worth of crypto. This is institutional capital positioning for something massive. And here's the context that matters. The previous cycle peak for stablecoin reserves was $1 billion. We're not quite there yet, but the trajectory is unmistakable. Money is flowing back into crypto at an accelerating pace. And when you combine this with Morgan Stanley's $9 trillion exploration into tokenization, when you factor in the banks rushing to Ripple, you start to see a picture forming that most people simply cannot see yet. And while retail investors panic sell during corrections, look at what the billionaires are doing. Asia's richest billionaire just revealed something that should shake you to your core. He owns 100% Bitcoin and crypto, zero fiat money. Not 50%, not 75%, 100%. And when asked about price volatility, when asked about the dips and the corrections and the fear, you know what he said? I don't care what the price is. This is the mindset that separates generational wealth builders from everyone else. while average investors check their portfolios every 5 minutes and panic at every red candle. Billionaires are accumulating and holding with diamond hands. They understand something that most people never will. The price today is irrelevant. What matters is where this technology is going. Listen to what this billionaire has to say about his strategy. Watch this clip.
So, Siddhi, you don't have fiat.
No.
Like, if I was to ask you how much cash do you have?
I have very little cash. I don't have this thing. It's like a card, right? So this is my interface to fiat. So it's like a Visa card. When I swipe, the merchant gets fiat. The crypto in my BNB in my account gets deducted in real time. I don't care what the price is. I just spend on any day the price at any day. That works for me.
So you are hedging always against somebody else's monetary policy is not affecting you.
The monetary policies don't affect us.
You are outside the system.
We're outside the fiat system. We're in the crypto system. The crypto system has more volatilities versus fiat, depending on how you view it. But if you benchmark yourself in crypto, you don't care. It's just that your spending power changes from day to day. But I can tolerate the volatilities. That doesn't bother me. If I look at the long term, like 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, crypto's going up.
Now here's the final piece of the puzzle that ties everything together. Social sentiment around XRP has hit its third most bearish reading in 2 years. The price has pulled back 63% from its high of $3.60, and most people see this as a reason to panic. But if you've been paying attention to everything we just covered, you know that this is actually the opportunity of a lifetime. Morgan Stanley is building for $9 trillion in tokenization. Binance is seeing billions in fresh capital flow in. Banks around the world are engaging with Ripple. 22 trillion in ETF volume is coming on chain, and XRP sentiment is at rock bottom. This is exactly when generational wealth is built. Not when everyone is euphoric and prices are at all-time highs, but when fear dominates, when weak hands are shaking out, when the smart money is quietly accumulating while everyone else runs for the exits. The billionaires aren't checking sentiment indicators. They're buying. The institutions aren't waiting for retail approval. They're building. And when the next wave hits, when clarity arrives and the floodgates open, those who position themselves during the fear will be the ones celebrating. The question is simple. Will you be one of them? If this opened your eyes, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. The biggest moves in XRP history are coming, and you don't want to miss a single one.